We need to create these brave spaces where students can try new things and make mistakes, have their voice crack, fail, okay? Not be perfect in a low-stakes environment. Because then when the stakes go up, university, life, they're presenting, a work pitch or something, they've had these experiences. And back to your point about confidence, they've built this confidence. I think there's failure involved in innovation, and people will naturally fear failure if they're set on an outcome. So allowing that messiness and that ambiguity and that tension to come into the work, that's all part of innovation. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited to host you.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be so much fun.
Let's
talk. I was reading a bit about your story. It's exceptional. You're at Appleby College now for over 2 decades.
Yes, I started at a very young age.
Yeah, which is a long time for anyone to be at one school. And you started as a music teacher, which I don't think I've had a guest that started as a music teacher ever. So you're my first in that realm. And now you're serving as the assistant head of school for innovation and research. Sounds super cool.
I'm enjoying it.
For those who don't know you or who have never met you, can you walk us through what that journey in education has been like for you?
Absolutely. I want to start by saying I'm really grateful. I'm sure a number of people would say this, but for the opportunities I've had through my life, through being able to sort of have a career that I love, that I find joy in. So thinking about the education path, I think it's sort of a series of relationships and meeting people and growing. I actually started one early job that you might not know about, let me surprise you, was as choral coordinator for the Toronto 2008 Olympic bid.
Oh, wow.
Right out of university, before I went to Teachers College, through my vocal teacher, Mary Lou Fallis, I was hired in that role. And I didn't know the Olympics had like this whole arts and culture side. I sort of saw it as the athletic
Me too.
Olympics, right? But no, there's this whole arts and culture side. So my job was essentially forming a choir of, 500 or something, meeting choirs across Toronto, hiring them to be a part of this.
Yeah.
I remember the song, "Expect the World, Our Welcome Has Begun." It was great. So in any case, that really opened my eyes to community building, just being out there, relationships with folks and how that can lead to things. From there, I'm one of the choirs that I met, the Viva Youth Singers of Toronto hired me on as a general manager, then a conductor, thus started my journey into nonprofit arts.
Wow.
And as you know, sort of 7 years later, after wearing many hats at Viva, I became artistic director of the Oakville Choir. Around the same time, in 2002, I was so lucky to be hired at Appleby College. And you're right, I was vocal teacher and choral director. My dream job, absolutely fabulous. And I think Appleby's afforded me, obviously, a lot of opportunities. I'll speak a bit to the progression of that because what I'll just say is I just kept wanting to learn more and staying curious. So a few years in, the opportunity to be a curriculum chair of the Visual and Performing Arts Department came up.
Wow.
So I jumped at that. I loved curriculum and I'd done my, just some sort of presenting at local conferences around that. I did my master's part-time because I had questions. I was like, wait a second. Why is this how it is? Or I need to learn more about this. So I was doing a master's in music education at the same time. Was able to applied for a department head role a bit later. That was wonderful. Great experience of leadership for me. Had more questions, decided to do my PhD through OISE. So that's the education as opposed to music education. It became a broader look at education. I was like, I want to look outside of music and look maybe at a broader area of education. So once I finished my PhD, the opportunity to become an academic director came up at Appleby. So that's kind of a middle-level director role. It was really exciting. I was doing, again, innovation and research work, and all was wonderful. I was also teaching, I still do, as an adjunct at Queen's University. I teach organizational leadership, which is another just fantastic way to learn and grow and interact with folks. I think there was a little bit of a moment, though, in my career around, I'm going to say 2018. I had my first 360 evaluation. And I don't think it's entirely common in education, maybe for teachers to have a 360, but being an academic director, it was like, okay, it's time for your 360. And I was like, what is this? And so there was a lot of, excellent feedback, but constructive feedback too. And one of the areas that came out was, Sarah, as a constructive area of growth, you need to improve your listening skills. And I'm like, what is listening like a thing? Like, I listen. Like, what is this? Like, I'm a leader, right? You're thinking like, what does listening have to do with anything? But it really did come across the board that this is an area where people think you could improve as a leader. And I was like, whoa. So big moment for me to kind of reflect on that. The person who debriefed my 360 with me was like, maybe you should try some coaching courses. And again, I'm like, coaching? What? So fortunately, the school supported me to, I intended to take one course, sort of a fundamentals through CTI, coactive coaching, and just fix my listening and kind of get on with it, right? Like, let's keep... And it was really transformative. I took all 5 courses, in fact. I took 3 years, did my certification in coaching, and really learned a lot about myself, about, I think, leadership in general. And that was, along with something like doing your PhD, but coaching was very transformative, I think, in how I was showing up as a leader. So then the opportunity came up to serve on the senior leadership team of the school. And I applied for it. I think just having more of a depth of self-awareness about myself as a leader and the different, just that really, really transformed me. And I think at that point I was, quote, quote, ready, or luckily the school thought I was ready. So I was hired as the assistant head of school academics and served that portfolio for a few years. And then the opportunity came up to serve in this new portfolio, innovation and research. And I'm really excited to be doing that now. So it wasn't completely linear, and I still teach a class or two of vocal music. I think that's a really cool thing that Appleby College does. All the faculty, sort of academic senior leaders are still in touch with where we started, which is as teachers. So that's very powerful.
Which is why you probably got into it in the first place, right? Is to be with students and help educate in their journeys as well.
Absolutely. So there's that.
For someone who wants to improve on their listening skills, what are 3 things that they should do?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think what struck me as a coach, like, because you have to like I had to be a coach. So it was the self-management. So it was, I'm a very, enthusiastic. I ideate a lot. I think quickly, right? Divergent thinker. So I can just jump in with ideas. So I think one thing for me was slow down, take a breath, stop interrupting, to be honest, and really listen to someone else for what they're saying. Don't think about what I'm going to say next. So it might have been like, some people say you could like wear a bracelet on the other arm to remind you of that. We have a cup of water here. I actually used water. So in all of my coaching sessions, because I would be coaching faculty as an academic director, that was a big part of my role. If I felt the urge to talk, I would take a sip of water. That's
That's
so
pretty
silly.
smart. No, it's smart.
It was a self-management tip. It's called self-management coaching.
And it's like an object that reminds you, like, you want to talk? The water's right there.
Or I'd write something down. So
okay, interesting.
I drank a lot of water. But ultimately, I think it really taught me the power of, in conversation with someone, and you probably know this in your podcast world, the power of pausing, the power of just sitting with silence. I don't think those were things I was very good at before that experience. So those are just some things I can offer from my experience. And now I'm going to take a sip of water.
I think it's very interesting. I mean, it's, were you, and I think I'm sometimes similar in the sense, and maybe this podcast has helped me shut up sometimes too, because I'm like, I'm not the person who needs to speak the most. Do you feel like in some cases it was preventing you from, like, were you going too extreme on some, like, how do you know where the right balance is? How do you know when you actually should be sharing your idea versus you're just talking for out of excitement? Because you also don't want to go too far on the other end, where you're like, I'm just listening and listening and listening and not sharing anything.
100%. And I think it's the context of what you're doing. As a coach, I think, literally, if I was like, I'm going to coach you right now, I would be asking questions and self-managing and listening, because it's really about the quote, quote, client and getting them to come to realization. If I was, for example, mentoring a new teacher, that's a different hat. So I might use a coaching technique to get the dialogue going, like asking a what question. But then I might also share some of my experiences as a mentor, right? That's different too. So I think it's just finding the balance in terms of what you are trying to achieve, either as a coach, a mentor, a leader, who's in the room, and what's needed in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned in your journey as well is right now you're also working as an adjunct professor at Queen's, right? You said?
Yeah, mostly just teaching the summer course in organizational leadership when it comes up. It's a lot of fun it's online, and it's really fun to engage, sort of keep that academic part of myself. Not that it's not done through research and learning at Appleby, but this is working with adult learners, so it's interesting in different ways. Yeah.
I mean, I think I haven't had too many guests on that have done both concurrently, which is like serving at the university level, but also at the school level. So, what do you notice? Like, are we preparing our students at schools in the right way for universities? Is something we should be doing more on either one of those ends?
It's so interesting. I just had this talk with folks. I was at CSSE, the Canadian Educational Conference, actually specifically throwing another acronym, CNIE, Canadian Network of Innovation in Education, but just had this talk with some university folks, because at these conferences, it's mostly university professor types presenting research. I presented about the Appleby College Learning Institute and some of our innovation work, and exactly that came up because they were talking about AI and the impact at the undergraduate level per se. And then it's sort of like, well, we should really be talking more because here's what we're thinking in the sort of 7 to 12 level. When I teach a course like organizational leadership at Queen's, I'll be honest, it's part of the Professional Masters of Inquiry program. So I'm more teaching like a high school principal who might want to get their PhD. This is a great master's to do that, or someone in independent. So I'm working more with not undergraduate. I'm not working with undergraduate at all. So I don't actually have a great sense on that gap. However, I will say, ironically or coincidentally, that just came up in early June when I was in Toronto, and I really made some nice connections with folks, I think, who we want to have more of those conversations. And are there conferences where we're getting, high school, specifically secondary school educators and university educators? I think probably the university counseling and guidance departments do a good job of connecting there, but that's more to help perhaps guide students but I think in terms of like what's
preparing
happening,
them as well.
That's a really neat question. I don't know if I'm an expert in that area, but I certainly think it came up, and it's important to keep looking there.
No, I mean, it's very interesting, and I think everyone has a different perspective on it. But moving on from there, I mean, you pursued music education. Tell us why. I mean, were you, as a child, you were always,
there you go.
into music? So
that's everyone who knows me will imitate. They'll be like, "Oh, Sarah." They know. So I think as a child, I was always singing or reading. I'd either have this giant pile of like Nancy Drew mysteries. I had a very active imagination and be reading, or I'd be, in our downstairs. I was a child of the 80s, so my parents actually did have a record player with vinyls, and I'd pop on like The Sound of Music soundtrack. I'd sing Maria. I'd pop on Oklahoma, sing the role of Lori, like sing my dream roles and just be there. So for sure, I was singing a lot. I joined choirs, church choir, high school choirs, the Toronto Mendelssohn Youth Choir back in the day. I think there was one moment that I remember in high school where our vocal choral teacher went on a maternity leave. And I think it was just like, it was sort of towards summer, do you know what I mean? Or something like this. And they didn't replace her role. The other music teacher just took more on. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but there was no one to lead the choir, especially the smaller chamber choir. And I sort of said, well, wait, we're going to Music Fest Canada. This was like a big deal. So I said, I'll do it. And I worked with my colleague students, and we went to Music Fest Canada and we placed silver. And now I'm so embarrassed thinking of how little I knew about choral conducting, but I caught the bug, the joy of not only singing, but then conducting. This is making music with others. Like there's a bigger palette. It's exciting. So for me, I mean, it was either law school, my dad's a retired lawyer, or I love music education. So I'm lucky my parents supported my decision to go into music.
Absolutely. No, that is so interesting. I'm going to throw in another interesting question. So when I used to go to music class in high school, I was really bad. But
I'm sure you weren't.
But I was horrible. You don't want to listen to me sing. But there were folks in my class that were really good.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed when I look back that those people had more confidence. And I find this very interesting, and maybe I'm completely incorrect. Are people who do really well in music more confident in general as students?
I think that's an excellent research question. I'm not going to pretend to know the answer. We'd have to delve into. Probably there have been studies, trying to make that correlation. I don't know. Are you saying someone? I think there's some inherent commonalities
because they're on stage.
So like
or
if
maybe
you're on
they're,
stage, like if I have a student who's in grade 10 and who can get in front of 30 people or 20 people and sing a solo, that might speak to, wow, their confidence could transfer to public speaking. That being said, I've known students, and I myself was a really confident public speaker in high school. I was a lot more nervous as a singer. That's been a thing in my life. I love to perform. That's why I think I gravitated towards conducting. But there is a confidence, but there's shades of, we'd have to really delve into that question. But I think certainly music education can lead to leaning into those strengths or, just that creative mindset. So perhaps it's a thing. I'm not entirely sure.
It'll be interesting to find out, right?
It would,
to your point. Yeah. And you moved from being sort of, as a music educator, and then you went on to assistant head, and you first led the curriculum desiging, and then you kept going to academics, and then now innovation.
Totally.
But it must have been not an easy transition necessarily to say, okay, I'm just going to move forward from this. So for those that are currently in education that also are sort of transitioning and taking similar leaps of faith and saying, I'm going to step outside my comfort zone. When you look back, how would you reflect on that experience of your own?
That's such a great question. I think moving into senior leadership did have its challenges. And I would say one of my fears going into that role would be, oh no, like how is it going to be with my colleagues and friends who now, especially going into the assistant head academics, report to me. It's a different relationship. It's all about relationships, I believe, in leadership. So suddenly the relationships shifts a bit. Yeah, I still teach, but when it comes to department heads, they report to me. Curriculum chairs report. All faculty would report in about something like a report card or a mark. So I think just navigating that change and leaning into the relationships and the respect, ideally, that I'd built in my time at Appleby, but also the one thing that I think kept me grounded in that transition is my view on leadership. Don't forget, I was trained as a musician. So sort of early on, let's say before I did my dissertation or did more studies on leadership, which I now teach, I sort of was always at the front, like the conductor needs to know everything, needs to really guide the group, have a sense of the direction, be the leader in front. I'll use that analogy.
Right.
But then with coaching and just spending more time in leadership roles, I kind of realized there's power in sometimes shifting to be the leader on the side. So maybe this is something where we're doing something as a team, or I don't always have to be the person who has the answers at the front, which it would be inappropriate in certain situations. So I'm gonna lead from the side. And then with coaching, it's actually leadership from, you often say, like behind. So it's how can I elevate this person? Because to me, the goal of leadership is ultimately to develop more leaders. How you're measured as a leader could be, well, who have you gone on and developed into a great leader? So I think keeping the different frames of leadership in mind also really helped me navigate that change. And also, honestly, just living into my values, authenticity and joy. Here's who I am. I didn't change. I'm just in a new role. You know me. And there's a certain amount, I think, of trust, again, in those relationships.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's say, you started this new role.
Yeah.
Day one, it's Monday. You're at the school. What do you set up a meeting with everyone that reports to you and you're saying, hey, still the same Sarah. Don't worry about the whole reporting thing. We're just going to have what do you do tactically? Are you having these meetings, these sort of one-on-ones? Are you, tactically, what has helped in terms of...
That's an interesting question. You're right, because I can't actually remember day one, what did I do? Certainly I had a meeting with all the department heads. And I think just keeping humility at the forefront.
Right.
Hi, I'm really honored to be in this role. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm in the room with, let's say there's 12 department heads, 12 amazing leaders and educators. Let's work together on this common goal. I think hearing voices in the room. So I might say something, but then let's go around and talk about something, where our departments might be facing challenges or want to go this year. So really, really, again, back to listening.
Yeah.
There's, I think, where I did start listening to people. I think in a new role, because I was always in a new role. I was a new choral director when I started. I was new at the Oakville Children's Choir when I started. And I think what helped really get the buy-in from people is authentically asking, like, where do you see, how can I help you is maybe a better way of framing that. How can I help you as a leader? How can I support you? Because our goal is to work together to transform the English department or continue to have this program thrive, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to think also in my nonprofit work, it's often how can I help? What can I do? And also, if it is a leadership role, here's what the school or the organization's mission and vision is. Let's use this as our framework, and where can we go? So I think there's this balance of, I think they knew I was the same Sarah. I didn't go in and say, hi, it's me again. There were some one-on-one meetings, and that's helpful too. And I think setting the boundaries of, if one of my friends also teaches vocal music. So if we were going to go to a concert sort of on the weekend, the Great Musical Theatre Show in Toronto, we'd know that was different than at work. So I think there's always those moments, those dynamics, but that's being a human. And that's just having the courage and the social awareness to say, okay, folks, here we are. We're in this meeting. Let me set the context and let me listen to you.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's really cool. One of the things that you've also been involved with is, I don't know if I can say ISEEN, but the Independent Schools Experiential Education Network.
You got it.
Sounds really cool. What's that about? I mean, I learned about it when I was doing my research, so I'm sure there are others who don't know much about it. What is that about, and how did you get involved with that?
Oh, wow. Our school, Appleby College, has a long history of experiential education. So I'm not exactly sure how long we've been a member of ISEEN, but it's been a long time. You could look on the website and find out all these little details, but so that's sort of, I'd heard of it. I think I'd been to one of the institutes, which is an amazing experience in itself. And several other colleagues in independent schools were on the board. So it just, an opportunity came up. They put a call out for board members. I actually have been privileged to sit on the ISEEN board for 3 years in the financial area. Who would have thought? My nonprofit experience is coming into play. But in any case, it's an absolutely wonderful organization that really does create this network. So I want to say the word network, I think, is crucial, because what's unique about ISEEN is when you go to, say, I'll use Winter Institute that's an example of one of their, you might say, conferences. But it's not like a conference where you're kind of like, let's, go listen to this paper, or you're immediately placed in a home forum group. You're talking to other people. You're making connections. I think the power of ISEEN is that the folks who I've met through the network, I could call up if I was like, oh, I'm kind of stuck on how to implement this in my school, or, oh, I wonder how this is going at this school. I just visited the Hawkins School in Cleveland a couple months ago, because I was like, I wonder how they're integrating AI. I'm going to call up, and go visit. And I did. And it was fantastic. So there's this reciprocal network of information sharing, leadership sharing, lots of things. Yeah.
What does experiential learning mean to you? Like, how would you define it?
Oh, boy. I think... first of all, experiential education, if you look at some of the literature into it, there is the Kolb cycle. That's sort of one of the frameworks that experiential educators would use in the classroom. So that's, again, similar to some of my thesis work, experiences, but then the reflection piece before redesigning and going forward. So there's this idea of, obviously, hands-on experience, but also reflecting on the experience. And I think I approach it as an artist. So the arts and the performing arts can be very powerful in experiential education, because it's a very much hands-on music making or dance or a visual art piece, and that can have a sort of a social justice or an environmental lens to it. And then we talk or we reflect in some way on that experience. What did that mean to us as learners or as teachers? So there's a lot of power, I think, in that kind of experiential education work. At Appleby, we have a whole, I won't speak to this too much because it's not my portfolio, but there's global education, outdoor education, lots of experiential education really deeply embedded into the school that my colleague sort of heads up that portfolio. But certainly there's power, I think, for students in that area of experiential ed. Yeah.
Do we often, as educators, sometimes forget about the reflection piece? And then maybe we over-index on actually like, let's do this really cool thing, or let's go out, and then the day is done and everyone's had a really good time. But do we often forget about the reflection piece?
Yes.
Okay.
I absolutely think so. I think there's lots of ways to effectively embed reflection, and we can kind of talk about that now if you want. When I was in the academic assistant head role, I had one of my favorite parts was opportunities to visit sort of all the different departments and classrooms and levels of the school. And I think I got to see such rich reflection in action. I think it is easy as educators. I do it myself. I'm sure in vocal we have this great experience and it's like, oh, no time for that. But a reflection could be a written journal. That's a very sort of obvious one you might think of. I think portfolios, I've done a lot of research presenting and work on that, are another really, really rich way for students to reflect, because there's this element of goal setting, often in a portfolio, lots of different types. But often with my students, I say, okay, let's set some goals. And then throughout the year, you're going to collect artifacts. And how do those connect to your goals? It might be that, you know what, my goal of overcoming stage fright never happened, but here's how another thing happened. So it's just getting students, we're going to talk about metacognition. I can nerd out about that, thinking about their own thinking. And I think that's the power of reflection. There's a quote by Dewey, something about experience and reflection. I'm not going to get it in this moment, but how reflection is such a core part of actually the learning process. And I truly believe that. And I want to say that reflection can also look like peer circles or a group just chatting about, hey, how was that experience? What did you learn? What did you notice in that moment? And I think the power of dialogue, I think we get trapped that it has to be this big written, like a portfolio sounds pretty daunting, eh? You're like, whoa, okay, let's just have a conversation about what we just experienced together in the classroom or on the sports field or on the stage or on a trip, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the other piece I noticed a bit in my dissertation work was the power of a technology scaffold. Okay, YouTube, 2005, that really transformed things, at least for me as a music educator, and also just using audio and video, like this podcast now, people can see it almost immediately. So with students, especially, I'll use the music context because it's where I'm most comfortable. But instead of me saying to a student like, okay, you just sang that piece, here's how you can improve, here's 3 things, they might record it, listen to it and say, oh, I hear this, I hear this, here's how I can improve as a learner. They're thinking about their process of making music or they're thinking in a musical way. So I think using video and audio and technology as a scaffold for that discussion and reflection can also be very, very exciting. Yeah.
Wow. How quickly should reflection happen? Is it right after the experience we're going to reflect? Is it the next day? Is it an hour later?
That's a great question. I don't know that there's probably some really scientific answer and I'm not going to get it in this moment. But I feel that I think in most cases, I think the sooner, like if you're able to have an experience and build in some sort of time for reflection, that's great. Although I don't think it's ever too late, because often, say it was on some sort of a trip or choir tour or something, you can have the tour and then come back together a week or 2 later and still have very rich reflection. So I'm not sure there's an exactly right answer. I think it depends on your intent with the reflection. I've also, and I want to try this, I haven't done as much of this work, but I've heard of some folks who do sort of a reflection intention. So instead of it happening after the experience, before the learning starts, they're like, hey, let's talk about a few intentions and how do we want to come together as a community, or what kind of a learning environment do we want to create? So there's actually the possibility of reflecting in advance too. There you go. So I don't know if there's one right answer. I think it would actually just depend on what am I trying to achieve, and also what sort of flexibility do I have in the day.
Yeah.
I'd say it's never too late. That would be a point.
Yeah, I love it. So your point of reflecting before is extremely powerful. And I'll tell you why. There was a researcher, a behavioral scientist, and she said that the way that, and this is a little bit disconnected, but it is related in some ways. When you send a meeting invite to someone, the way that what your meeting invite says has an influence on the way that they show up to the meeting. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Let's say me and you are negotiating a deal.
Yeah.
If I had named the meeting invite, Sarah-Dheeraj Connect.
Okay. I like that.
Okay.
Seems pretty...
very commonly used. We're going to connect.
Yeah.
if I say Dheeraj-Sarah, negotiation and finalization of contract,
that's a different meeting.
Mentally, you're going to come to that meeting ready to finalize the contract with me. You're not going to come to that meeting to connect.
Nope.
And so in some shape or form, when you said that, it sparked this idea that if we get kids to have a bit of a thought before they go into an experience,
100%.
The way that we position it will start to play in there. So if I'm a student and I say, okay, I want to go to this experience, and one of the things is I really want to learn about design thinking, or I really want to know about how to ask better questions.
Yeah.
When they show up to that experience, in their brain, it's just playing all the time. I remember I said that, how have I got that out of this meeting, right? How have I got this out of the experience? So when you said that, it sparked that interesting idea, which I think more people should do.
I love that example you gave too, because you're right. The whole tone of like how you positioning. Be careful when I send out meeting requests, but I'll often be like, check in, because I don't want the person to get all like, why is Sarah wanting to?
Why is there like an intense meeting? Am I okay?
No, they know me. Or I'll put a little emoji. I'm a
smiley face.
Oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Not businesslike, but I think that's true. And I think great educators do frame that experience really well, like to have an intention at the beginning, experience, and then another reflection. I think with my work, specifically in integrating portfolios, which have a ton of research, OISE and beyond, I integrated them intentionally into music education as part of my master's and then just PhD dissertation. But again, this goal setting is what you sort of spoke to, like an intention could also be a goal. So having the students choose their own goals, this speaks to voice and choice and sort of identity, is also very powerful because suddenly they have ownership and agency. They might have to, if they sign up for my vocal music course, grade 9 vocal music, they're going to have to learn singing, right? Okay, that's part of the curriculum. However, I'd love to be able to give agency and voice and choice in what they're going to sing sometimes and what their goals are. Maybe their goal is to sing and play guitar at the same time. That's fantastic, okay? So I can help you with technique and lots of other stuff, but if I know that's their goal, I can also support that. So we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think that the reflection piece can also really help to integrate that student voice and choice.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. You've also led the Oakville Children's Choir for 15 years, from what I see, and it's grown internationally as well, which is super, super cool in terms of the scale. Can you share a story from that experience? And if is there one memory that you always look back, or you look back right now and you're like, oh my God, that was pretty fun? And I know that you've also done a lot of international tours, like different types of places all around the world. So what are some reflections from those experiences?
Yes, the OC, now the Oakville Choir for Children and Youth. My daughter's singing the choir, has a really special place in my heart. The team that I had the privilege of working with was absolutely phenomenal. I only quote retired because it became too busy. Became too busy with senior leadership. That was exactly that time, and I was like, okay, this is going to be too much. Yeah. But certainly, I think the experience of touring, the magic of being. I'm trying to think of a specific. The Church of the Rock in Finland, like singing in that acoustic, where you just can't replicate that, right? Like you're like. So like I'm auto-tuning myself here. Or the reverb and the magic, the connections that choristers make through tours are very powerful. Impromptu moments. I remember, we were doing something in Newfoundland. I think we were at like some dinner theater, but they found out that we were there and we were a choir, and they invited us onto stage, and we knew a couple ABBA pieces. Oh yeah, and so we were there singing. I don't remember which. It wasn't Dancing Queen. It was another one of our ABBA sort of pieces that we had for choir.
But that's so fun.
So many. I think music can be a great vehicle for transformation. I think the other things I definitely remember are the stories. When alumni come and visit me, they'll say, and I'm not trying to take credit at all. I think what we do as artistic leaders is we create these spaces, okay, where hopefully young people can thrive. So they'll share like, wow, like, you didn't necessarily know this, but this was a tough time in my life for whatever reason. And singing really helped me, gave me an outlet, helped me make new friends in the choir, different from my school friends where I might have been having issues. Yeah. Parents have shared like grade 1s and 2s because we have little ones. Wow, you have no idea. But my son was really struggling with reading. And after a year in the choir, like there was this transformation with his literacy skills. And again, I take absolutely no credit because I have not studied literacy at that level. But there is something to be said. I had a visit last week from an amazing young woman, Tenny, an alumni of the choir. And, she'd been in the choir. She has been in the choir program for a long time. She started in grade 5 and worked her way up through the choir. And eventually was, singing solos. She came to the World Choir Games with us. She was our head chorister, one of the top positions. And she came back to share that now she's not only going to Brown for med school, but also she's releasing her first single on Spotify as a singer-songwriter.
Oh, wow.
Look up Teniola. She's amazing. So it's just those moments. So it keeps on going. I had a phenomenal 15 years with that organization, and I still, support and love the organization. I teach some of the youth leadership just a little bit to stay in touch with the amazing work that the new conducting team does, but certainly very, very special.
Is it very competitive? I mean, I've never tried to even compete in a choir because I would definitely get out of there. But
like the World Choir Games?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It is because it's also very fun.
Right.
I think like the athletic Olympics. We were talking about the Olympics at the beginning of this, but yeah, you're marked on various aspects of choral technique, like blend, balance, and level of difficulty. Oh boy. And then there's choreography. That's my favorite, like movement and how you bring the song to life. It's there's been shows, like remember Glee on Show Choir? That was probably before your time. I'm dating myself here. But in any case, it can be competitive. But I think along with that, at any sort of competition or festival or whatever we're at, the important thing was the young people singing beside other choirs from around the world, meeting them. Like there'd be these random, like we're at a coffee house and two choirs would be like, do you know this song? Yeah. Do you know this song? And they'd just start coming like almost like busker styles, breaking into song. And it's those moments that the connections. I think we used to exchange like mailing addresses and stay in touch. Now it would be like social media handles, but the connections with the young people, I think that's why we do what we do, because it's powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, that's so cool. I was going to ask you a really interesting question. So, is people with the, maybe for lack of a better word, with a gifted voice, are they born or are they made? Like, can I, like, if I want to become... You didn't
prepare me for this one, no kidding.
If I want to become like Ed Sheeran 2.0, can I like leave the podcast and start doing like, start singing? Like, can you, is it just you're born with it or you're not? Or what's it like?
I truly believe that everyone can sing. There's a really low... I guess there is like less than 1%, I think, of the population actually would have some sort of perhaps like tone deaf is kind of the common. I don't know what exactly it would be called, but who might have trouble matching pitch, and there might be a bit of a problem that you'd have to work through.
But an average.
Most people can sing. It's just if you weren't exposed maybe to singing, in your home at a young age, or somehow like I think we're exposed a lot to listening to music, which is awesome, but songs on the radio are in quite low keys if you think about singing along to pop singers. So you're only developing maybe your chest voice, you're not getting your whole range. But the more that we can expose, young children love to sing. Think about before they get into school, they're always making up little songs.
But I was always nervous.
Songs. You can be nervous, but then we get into school and it becomes like this thing. So just keep kids singing, keep them playing instruments. I think absolutely with vocal lessons and training, I've seen it at young ages, high school ages, with adults. I'm not going to promise, like, don't call me on the podcast, like, you're wrong. Okay, fine. There might be cases where really I couldn't get the person to match pitch or sing, but anyone who wants to sing should and can sing. And
it's like athletics. You practice more and more and more and you get better at it.
Yeah, I think people think it's this like, talent I've been given. Absolutely not. I practiced. I worked hard. I've had a lot of singing teachers like, you have a pretty voice, but nothing special. Like, trust me, like, it's not like you don't. I mean, some people maybe with very, very mature, wonderful voices are just kind of like show up like that. But it's a lot of work and effort and learning, and it's just like playing an instrument. So yeah, and it's embodied. That's the difference. So it's you, right? It's not like I can't, like I played saxophone in high school too. So if I was having an issue with the saxophone, I might be like, oh, well, like my reed broke. Like I can blame the instrument. But don't forget with singing, it's very personal. So I have to be very careful. I think it's a lot of power when I'm working with adult singers are very nervous, young singers, adolescents. Like what a time to be building your identity. So I think it can be a very positive vehicle, but we have to remember that it's an area for a lot of people, like you said, where it can be a nerve-inducing activity, especially if you're suddenly like, sing alone. So I very rarely would walk into a class and immediately have people start to sing alone. That would not work. I don't think I'd get the buy-in and the relationship with the students. Maybe grade 12s, who I've worked with for a long time, I can sort of push them more.
Yeah.
You get to know. But yeah, absolutely.
Early on.
Often in high school, and I think this is what high school is about. I think we need to give students opportunities. We need to create these brave spaces where students can try new things and make mistakes, have their voice crack, fail, okay? Not be perfect in a low stakes environment. Because then when the stakes go up, university, life, they're presenting, a work pitch or something, they've had these experiences. And back to your point about confidence, they've built this confidence. So I think in the vocal classroom, I'm creating this brave space, hopefully, where students feel comfortable sharing their voice, whether it be their opinion, their singing voice. It's kind of all the same to me in education. That's why a lot of people for like leadership team activities are like, a musician will come in and like work with the team on singing. And I'm like, really? I'm surprised there aren't more musicians. You're right. In leadership roles, like outside of music.
Yeah.
Because I think musicians would make really good leaders.
There's a correlation there. Yeah, no, I find that very interesting because I think it's also something that could be applied to a lot of different types of... It's not just music, right? It's about like... I used to detest music class because we were asked to sing solo in front of everybody and prepare a song. Like, of course you're going to be nervous when you have never... And our music teacher was like a substitute physical ed teacher. He knew nothing about music. He would just listen to us, be like, well, that sounds good. And great. So I think maybe my, logistically speaking, I think that experience is very different.
I'm sure he was as nervous as you.
Yeah.
He was had to teach music.
Yeah,
like,
he probably was very nervous. Exactly.
Teaching phys ed, yeah.
So, but I like your point about how do you create a space where it's okay to make a mistake. And everyone like is like, yeah, I've been there. And it's not a space where you're looked at, like everyone's looking at you if your voice cracks and they're like, oh my God, what did you do, right? But it's more of a, yeah, okay, let's keep going, right?
Right. So translate that to leadership or to me working with faculty or adults. It's like, how can we, or as leadership, how can we create spaces where, and I think this is some of the work I'm doing with the AC Learning Institute and other areas, where teachers will stand up and say, hey, I tried this. It didn't work, but I'm going to share my process with you. And that to me is so exciting when we can get to that space. And that to me signifies a culture of innovation where people can admit, okay,
take a bit of risk.
We did this. We tried it. Maybe didn't come out as we thought. And then the next time it might, or a different iteration might. So I think there's some sort of a correlation between the learning, we can do in the music classroom and then, or probably any classroom, any subject area, and then the bigger picture. Yeah.
There absolutely is. Now, your dissertation, Engaging Student Singers, Developing Reflection and Collaboration in a Technology-Enhanced Learning Environment. Hopefully that sounds familiar.
You read that more than I have.
And rings recently. Positive memories as you're working through that. But one of the case studies was new to singing, right? And one of the questions that we had was when you see students which is related to our question, what approaches tactically do you start to inbuild in them to make them, get a bit outside their comfort zone? Because I think that's something that not just applies to music, but everything else. How do you get students to actually get out of their comfort zone, make them more comfortable?
I think twofold. So one way is that, and educators, I've seen magical educators from like kindergarten classrooms to undergraduate universities creating these, you could say safe space, but more than that, this brave space where people will get up and try things. And I think there's an element of trust. There's an element of relationship building. It is not like, hi, it's day one. Let's all say our names. Okay, now sing. That induces stress in me as a singer. I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
I think there's something also, especially maybe I'll relate it to my work with mostly adolescents because it's grade 7 to 12 at Appleby. So something about the confidence would be leaning into strengths. And this is kind of an interesting one, but I'll often use in leadership work, or we use it at Appleby, the positive psychology kind of framework, the VIA character strengths. So it's a little assessment you can take for free online, and it shows 24 strengths that are supposed to be universal, and it kind of ranks them. So if I took them, I'd see like my top 3, my maybe 3 at the bottom that I work on. But I think for students, just identifying their strengths. I've worked with so many high school students, both sort of in choir leadership or in my classroom or a club or student leaders or something, where it's like, oh, so you're saying that curiosity can be a strength or humor is a strength. And we're like, absolutely. And then we might say as a sort of coaching question, what does this look like when it shows up for you? Or how might you apply this to your leadership? And I think a lot of people, this is sort of speaking about leadership too, but confidence as well and getting students. But people treat these experiences as so big. It's like, oh, I'm not a leader. Leader is such a big thing. And it's like, let's just break it down. Like, what's an act of leadership or something brave that you can do to step into this space? So I think acknowledging the positive can actually be a really good starting point, because so much of, I think definitely in music, but in life too, it's a gap. It's like, okay, you need to improve on this. Okay, that was great, but here's this. Okay, where did you lose this?
We've always been taught the sandwich method, right? Say something good and then throw in the something constructive. You know, we've always been taught that.
First of all, clear is kind. So if I actually had something constructive, like when I got the feedback about listening, that was kind.
Yeah.
Because if it had been sandwiched, I might have gone away from that meeting thinking, I'm great. Yeah. So I think sometimes just
be transparent, be clear.
But yeah, I think your question's about stepping out of comfort zones. I think with adolescents too, and something we do at Appleby is back to that experiential education. We do have some outdoor education programs where folks go to our northern campus in Temagami. It's absolutely phenomenal. My, again, colleagues sort of head up this work, but kind of taking students out of their comfort zone, maybe in the classroom, and putting them into, I don't want to say forcing them, but these are activities you kind of can't opt out of. Right. So I think, like, I'm not the greatest camper. I'm much more into glamping, but I went to Temagami and I was really nervous as a faculty member with my advisor group. And I loved it. Just the experience of really pushing myself. So I think whether we end up loving, outdoor camping or not, it's how can we be resilient in these moments? So there's that aspect to getting out of a comfort zone, trying new things. At Appleby, one of our things is breadth of experience. So students have to, join a co-curricular in the arts, in athletics, in service. And they might not know, like, wow, I really loved this service, or wow, I did cross country. It wasn't my thing, but man, did I persevere, and I made it to the end. So great there. A student who might not think that they, have an interest in musical theater. That's a great example of a really cool approach. Might audition for the school musical or something and be part of that. And then, so I think offering students these experiences to, absolutely, they eventually, we all find sort of passion areas, right? Yes. However, I'm a singer, but one of my favorite high school memories is I was on the grade 9 basketball team. It was the only one I made. I was most improved player, probably because I could. They were like, Sarah, you started here. But you know what? I cherish that memory of being on that basketball team. Yeah. I'm so grateful for that coach. Yes, I'm a strong musician. My hand-eye coordination has never been the greatest because I wore glasses, and all that. But wow, she took a chance on me. And I think it's taking chances on students and making sure that we don't have too many barriers up at high school. Like, I think it's tough when we hear kids say, like, oh, I really wanted to learn guitar, but it's too late. I'm going into grade 11 and everyone's already good. No. This is high school. Like, take a chance. Learn a new thing. Like, if you haven't done this, let's try it. And I think I love working in spaces like at Appleby where I see my colleagues encouraging students to always try new things. It's never this feeling of like, too late. Oh, you haven't tried debating? Why don't you come out? Give it a shot. Yeah, and maybe it's not your thing, but I think this idea of giving these opportunities when we're able to, it's a privilege, but it's fantastic.
I love that. I mean, I think I always tell students, like, if you try something and you find out that you don't enjoy it, that's also a win.
Totally.
It's not like, oh, I wasted time. No, it's also a W, right? Because you're still exploring and you're learning more about yourself. And then you ask these questions, what should I pursue in university? And then you might pursue something, but you might end up somewhere else, right? And then you build this repertoire of knowing that not everything is a end-all, be-all type of decision. You're moving along and you're doing things. And as long as you do it with the right intent, you're going to be fine.
And I'm so grateful. I can think of some of my teachers, and I think this happens in education today still, where I'd be like, okay, like I got really good at playing the game of school. So I remember in one course, or I failed my first test. It was in physics. Grade 10 physics. And I went and I was like, well, how can this happen? And my physics teacher's just like, well, you clearly missed some stuff. You need to prepare more. I'm happy to sit down with you. And I was like, oh, like, but like, what? And I was like, I have to work harder? Like, it becomes a thing. Or in, it was some sort of a world history course. And I was assigned a subject for my big essay. And I think it was like capitalism and Adam Smith. And I was like, I don't understand this at all. Like, I had still no interest in business. Yeah. And I said to the teacher at the time, I said, can I please switch and do like something with music and like some movement in music education? And they were like, no, you got this topic. And I was like, so hearing no as a student, like, you're going to have to go back to the card catalog in the 90s. There was no help with the internet, but it was sort of like, figure it out, learn. I think living in that tension is really important for students, like building that resilience. I probably didn't do that well. I did learn about capitalism. I do have a grasp on it, but I didn't want to. But sometimes doing some of the things that you don't want to do, it's okay to say to kids, you know what? Let's try this, okay? It might not, like exactly what you said, it might not be your favorite thing. I did not go into physics. Fine. But not giving them an easy out all the time. Like, let's live in the tension. Let's live through some of the time.
Yeah, it's important.
That's resilience.
Build a resilience, right? Build a grit. Yeah.
Totally. So I think some of that is embedded into education is powerful for students.
Yeah, I love that. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your current role, Assistant Head of Innovation and Research, right? What are some of the most exciting things that you're working on as part of that portfolio right now?
Yeah, it is very exciting. I think just the creation of the new role really speaks to the school's commitment to really continue to innovate, to research. It's, I think, broader scale, and then we can kind of drill down to the specifics, but it's sort of like keep continuing to build, foster this culture of innovation at Appleby College. And I think that can also be done through research. So the sort of portfolio approach is, how does innovation show up in sort of the core and other areas adjacent of the organization? Also, I find it interesting in this very time that we're in with the rise of Gen AI, uncertainties, even sort of the wicked problems that you hear about in design thinking, like climate change, or just to name one. But okay, so there's all that going along. How are we innovating? How are we prioritizing this? One interesting thing that's happening right now at Appleby that I'm excited about in this role, and I mean, this is a bit down the road, but we're always looking to the future, is that we've just broke ground on a new building. It's called Cockwell Hall. And in that space, there's going to be an innovation hub space. So I'm super excited about just being in the meetings and co-designing that space and what that can bring to students and staff and faculty. So there's that to kind of look forward to. And then with that, okay, where are we going to go with our innovation pathway? So yeah, I can speak more to specific things, but that, I think, a big part of my role, we've talked a lot about culture, is that culture of innovation. Yeah.
Which area in education do you think needs the most innovation right now?
Oh, what do you mean by which area?
Like curriculum, or, like, is it more about student experience? Is it more about athletics? Is it more about,
I honestly
grading?
Think, I talked to my colleague who's the assistant head of well-being. She's amazing. I talked to her about this too, because with innovation and something like well-being, I really think it has to be embedded everywhere. It can't just live off on its own. So things like DEIB or whatever we're saying here, they really are across the board. It would be hard for me to say, like, innovation should show up in the visual and performing arts department because that's where the artists are, or innovation is going to be in the tech space or the design lab. We have an awesome design lab because that's where, you have the 3D printers and so, like, I don't know that there's one area. I certainly think pedagogy is a great place. I'm not saying it needs to be like taken apart, but that's, how you teach, how you approach education, how you set up a classroom. There are probably opportunities for innovation there. Sometimes we get very stuck, especially because in independent schools, we get inspected by the ministry every few years. So we do get a little bit like, okay, we have to make sure we're doing this. So it's in spite of that. It's almost like in spite of grades, how can we innovate? Like when we're working with students. Yeah. There's some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard about the ministry inspections. Yeah. They're very intense.
They sure are.
Which is good. I mean, hold you guys to high standards and
absolutely.
And as anybody should.
We did very well.
Yeah.
We're good.
Absolutely. What is something that you're really excited about as part of your portfolio? Is it the building? Is there something else that you're really, really excited about in the next year or two?
Okay. I think I'm really excited about, I mentioned briefly, I'll just sort of contextualize. I mentioned the AC, Appleby College Learning Institute. Right. So that's essentially a space where our mandate is to promote innovation and growth through learning and teaching locally and globally. So it's a space where faculty and staff both are blogging about innovation, conferences, things they want to share. It's fantastic. And we've awarded for the past 3 years innovation grants. And this could be a faculty member, so a teacher, but it could also be someone in marketing who has an innovative idea. It just has to have student impact. So I think this is a great space that we're building, and people present on it. So again, someone will come up and be vulnerable or celebratory about like, this was a great innovation, this worked, or et cetera, et cetera. So I think some examples have been like one of our faculty members now has designed and built a permaculture lab through her environment and resource class. Absolutely. And again, I am not taking credit for any of this. I just create the space, and amazingly talented people sort of run with it. We had a St. John's, I think, therapy dog. We had a therapy dog program, but outside dogs came in, if this makes sense. It's part of our well-being strategy. It can be lovely for students to work with a therapy dog. So they have like office hours. Then our director of well-being paired up with someone, a director of marketing, and said, might we train our own dogs? Can we have a grant to train dogs? So we have in-house therapy dogs at Appleby. So Burke, our first therapy dog. It's so cool, these ideas. Another amazing faculty member has been working with place-based learning and Indigenous ways of knowing, and sort of tapping our maple trees on campus for syrup. And now she's teamed up with a group of, I forget their name, but they're going to be building a syrup shack and actually continuing with this work with students. Yeah, so this is all very cool. And again, this is not coming from me, Sarah. This is coming from
all the
let's
people
build
that are
the
taking
space and blog about it. So this year, this is where here's what I'm excited about. We launched 4 along with the innovation grants, which we hope to also expand to students next year, but futurist grants. So we've teamed up with an organization called Teach the Future. They've been around for, I think, about 10 years. They're a global organization working on futures mindset, futures thinking. So I'm actually taking their courses right now. They're sort of training so that I can roll this out in the fall. It's really exciting work. I've done strategic foresight, but I haven't done specific futures thinking training. So I literally just had 5 hours last week, more this week. It's very exciting. In any case, what we hope to do this coming year is we're launching this through the 4 Employee Futurist Awards. So it's sort of like, imagine the future of, like, one is our school librarian is looking at the future of school libraries. It's very cool. And then with students through a club platform, ideally through an immersive where we deal with futures thinking, and then at some point, micro-credentials. So there's these plans to like integrate different ways of thinking into Appleby College, which I think is very exciting.
That's a lot to be excited about, which is lovely.
Partnerships, I think, is going to be an area where we continue to grow. And I know a lot, we already have some great partnerships. This is a new one that I just referred to. And I find that these can kind of snowball into really exciting things. So sometimes, just like with leadership, where people can like get really like kind of hung up in like how big the word is and get daunted about being a leader. I think like break it down. Like, yes, a big I innovation. In the literature, there's like big C creativity and little c creativity. Big I innovation can be daunting, okay? Like inventing like an Apple phone or a device or something. But let's look at a lot of little I innovations. Those can often lead to a big moonshot moment, or can just keep this culture going. So I think there's a lot of ways to approach it. And that's where I'm really grateful to my head of school and my principal, because this portfolio, I think, is something needed and really exciting for all.
It sounds like so much fun. It sounds really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift gears into a rapid fire round. It's a fun round. So I'll throw you a question and then I'd love to go for it. Give me a response in under a minute. Does that sound okay? Okay, perfect. In your view, what's one misconception about education that you wish more people understood?
Misconception. I think some people view education still as a transactional model. And I think that's maybe what it was at some point. But this idea that here's my kid, teach them, or like the student, there's like pictures of this, the student with the empty head and the teacher with all the knowledge, and that sort of transaction approach to education. And I think, in fact, that is not correct, that students at any age, young kindergartners up to undergraduates, come in with their own life experiences, views, knowledge, thoughts on whatever subject we're doing. Certainly music. They've been listening to music all their lives. How can I assume they don't know about music? They know a lot about music. So it's more this co-creation, this inquiry, sort of knowledge, inquiry, forum, creation, learning from each other. I just think a lot of people would still think like, oh yeah, like you're a teacher, so you're at the front of the room, drawing on the chalkboard, teaching kids. Maybe that still happens, and yes, but I think that in many cases we've shifted
away from that.
Yeah, and people who maybe aren't in education
They still believe that.
They still default to that. Oh, okay, yeah, that's what's happening.
True, that's a great one. I mean, I think kids teach us a lot. So teach us probably more than we can teach them. So what's one small experiment educators could try tomorrow?
I think that one small experiment educators could do at any sort of level would be get out of their classroom. I understand the day's very busy. I teach too. But we all have like a little lunch or prep period or something. Just take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, as long as you can take out of your classroom and go visit a colleague. If you teach in music, I'm going to go visit a colleague in English, or maybe the science would go visit someone in phys ed or a grade 5 teacher. Go see what's happening around the corner in the kindergarten classroom. I think sometimes breaking down silos and getting out of our own kind of areas of expertise can make us both more open to learning, and also we start to notice things like, oh, that could be cool. There's an innovation. That's something I don't do in my context. How might a business context work in music education or vice versa? So I think we are our own best resources. Of course, you could go visit other schools. That's fantastic too. And we were chatting about that.
There's already so much happening at a school.
There's already so much happening in a school. And I find sometimes like someone in an administrative role probably gets to see a lot of that. But we forget sometimes just to get out of your classroom. It could be once a month. Like this doesn't have to be every day because people are busy. But try to sit in on someone else's class, maybe someone who you admire or someone else who your students have said, oh, I love so-and-so's French class because it's always, and what is happening in that French class? I want to go know. I've learned so much through putting myself in the student role and with others' permission, of course. Often schools have this open door policy as appropriate, and being in there and just observing and being like, very cool.
I love that. That is so cool. I really like that. What is one thing you've changed your mind on recently?
Okay. I'm going to be honest. Recently, it's Gen AI, it's AI. I think because I was in the role of assistant head academics when AI, let's just say ChatGPT first kind of came out 2022, I think, Kay. That was like right in the heart. And I think I wasn't alone in this, but I'm going to use the I statement because it was me. We all sort of reacted like, ooh, like the academic integrity. This is an unknown. Like, let's try to like not shut it down, but how can we control this? How can we? And I admit, I was like, I was on that bandwagon. I had a parent who was in cybersecurity, fabulous, come and speak to us. It was great. And I was learning more and more and more. But now shifting into innovation and research, that helped a little bit too. But as we've evolved with Gen AI tools and seeing, students are going to use them. So it's sort of more like, okay, from a human-centered perspective, how might we incorporate Gen AI into education to personalized learning? Or there are many possibilities. I can't even get into that in under 1 minute, but I just want to say, I think my view on that has definitely shifted. And hopefully it's become a bit more open and trying to kind of navigate, again, innovative. There's that buzzword, but ways where we might be able to use Gen AI in a human-centered way in education.
I find it very interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting next 3, 4, 5 years. I think education will go through a lot of change in the next few years. And
we should talk again in a few years.
Yeah,
see where
it'll be fun to see where we end up. No, absolutely. What does true innovation look like to you?
Innovation to me involves some sort of a change, a movement, maybe away from a traditional approach or the status quo or just something different. I think innovation work often looks really messy. I lean into the process of innovation. I worry a lot less about the outcome. So to me, it's not like, oh, cool, we have this great product or this new thing. It's like, okay, what's the process? Or how did you get there? Because that's to me the magic part of it. It's definitely not a linear. There's no one kind of pathway that we could say. I think obviously design would be one way I'd look at it, like that iterative cycle of again, trying things, failing, iterating, reflect, experience. We've talked a lot about this, but it sort of looks like that. And yet, I think innovation can be seen as a response, maybe to an area where we're stuck, maybe to a wicked problem. We start to think outside the box, and thus comes an innovation. So there's some element of change response, but I would like to say that when I look at innovation, or I'm thinking about innovative work, it's a lot more process-based and a lot less worry about the outcome, because I think there's failure involved in innovation, and people will naturally fear failure if they're set on an outcome. So allowing that messiness and that ambiguity and that tension to come into the work. That's all part of innovation. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a great response.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to our final question. So we have a bit of a tradition here.
Okay.
We have our previous guests to leave questions for our future guests, and then I'll give you an opportunity to ask a question. So this is one where we don't really have the questions beforehand. So we find out
I'm excited. Okay.
Absolutely. So let's see who we have here.
I'll see if I can sing. Can I work singing into one of them?
Absolutely, you could, if it fits into the question. Yeah. Let's see. This question is from Richard Prosser, who is the deputy head at Crescent School.
Awesome.
And Richard's question is, if we are truly preparing our students for the future, what is one thing we should stop doing and one thing we should start doing?
Richard, thank you. Great question. Okay. Stop doing and start doing. Something to stop doing, and I don't know how we stop this, but stopping or helping students stop themselves from being mark-focused, grade-focused, perfectionism. To me, those are things that get in the way of deep learning. I think his question was something about preparing students for the future. So that idea of like focusing on marks and exams, and they're things we all have. Okay, we all have them, especially at secondary, and I get it. But when I see students come in and they're very sort of perfectionist or mark focused, it's a bit of breaking that down. So I think I don't know how we can stop doing that. Richard, if you have an answer, let's talk, because we need to provide, feedback and grades and assessment. Maybe it's just providing different forms of assessment or feedback continually to students so that they're not so mark focused. This is a big problem. I don't have the answer in this moment, but trying to kind of break that down, Yeah. So obviously that takes a lot of design in how you assess and how you give feedback. And it's going to be the student's natural instinct to want to know the marks. Something we can start doing, I think we can start to normalize, again, I've said this before, but I'll say it again, normalize making mistakes and like failing forward as part of learning. Failure doesn't have to be this big thing, but mistakes, it sort of speaks to the other half of the question. Okay, if we want to get rid of perfectionism and sort of mark focus, can we normalize iterative thinking, messy learning, play, making mistakes? Because often, if a student makes a mistake, our first instinct as a teacher, I say this and it sounds very like, oh, that's a nice rhetoric. But no, like, I'll stop myself from correcting them automatically. But let them just sit in that space. If they're having trouble, say they're playing guitar and singing or playing piano and singing, well, whatever song, I don't just jump in to fix them. Like, let them be in the tension. This is my hands playing piano for a minute and try to build their confidence, resilience, whatever you want to say, to get out of that moment. If we're just constantly coming in and fixing and saying it's okay, and like let them have
they're
a
gonna
moment.
feel more pressure or more of a need to only play when perfect.
Yes, and then learn from it. I will have students, I've just picked up this instrument. I can't possibly play. Oh, I can't sing it in front of you yet. Oh, I can't. I'm like, stop.
Just do it.
Let's hear this is back to innovation being more of a process. So I think if we're truly, this is something to start doing, to Richard's question, start to build that in very small ways and intentional ways in the classroom. So I think as teachers, we've also been taught to like, okay, let's find the gaps. Let's fix, let's go in. And as coaches too, that's a coaching thing. It's not fixing. It's trusting that the person is going off on a bit of tangent, but I love it, is naturally like resourceful, creative, whole, resilient. So a bit of that coaching mentality. If we say teachers are coaches, let's be coaches. And sometimes let's let students struggle in these safe, brave spaces we've created. If we say we've really created these spaces and just build their resilience a little bit. So I think that could help. I think resiliency, when you think of futures thinking, a lot of what we've talked about, that's a key skill that is built through this idea of futures mindset or futures thinking. And I think the ability to be resilient is going to be a critical skill for all of us moving forward through an era of rapid change. So not always being reactive, but being able to say like, okay, this is a time of uncertainty. I'm able to move through this tension and I'm able to get through it because I am resilient, or I can move through with optimism. So some of these power skills are going to be increasingly important. And I think we have to let students struggle a little bit to build these skills.
Yeah, you can only stand up if you fall.
There you go. Thank you, Richard.
But yeah, that was a lovely answer. I really enjoyed that. Sarah, I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave a question for one of our next guests. So feel free to just scribe it in, feel free to, be as difficult as Richard.
Oh, I'll be nicer. I'll be nicer.
Right.
Okay.
Whatever feels right.
Sure.
That's what Richard said. He said he was being nicer to someone else. So.
I don't know, Richard. That was a tough one. Let me know if it's clear. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah, okay. I do
better handwriting than a lot of other. I could tell you that. Yeah. Sarah, this has been an absolute joy. I mean, I've loved talking to you. I've loved learning from you. So thank you for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. I mean, I wish that you were my teacher back because in music.
Let's sing. Come on.
Yeah, but it was really nice. I mean, I think you brought such a different lens to so many different aspects of what we usually dive into, and I appreciate you spending time with us and sharing these insights and these journeys. So thank you. It was really nice.
Thank you. Gratitude right back at you. It's been a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you.